And today we are talking to Jo Wood about her expert tips on how to get a good night's sleep before race day, which is something I think is really important. Now, Jo is a strength and run coach at Aspire 2, a level 3 high performance road, trial, and ultra coach via Athletics Australia, and a level 2 coach with Training Peaks. She also has a very interesting history in the sense that she has an immunology PhD and a past as a senior medical writer, so very interesting backstory. And then she changed course to help others achieve their running related goals. And Jo has a passion for trail and road running, strength training, and coaching. So, Jo, first up, we know that sleep is important for pretty much everything in life. But why is getting a good night's sleep a good idea before race day?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sleep affects all areas of our life, and it's definitely a factor in performing to your potential on race day. Look, you can have the best training in the world, you can be as fit as you possibly can be, but if you're fit and fatigued, there is no way in the world you're going to have a good race day. And a lot of people actually miss out on getting a good night's sleep in sufficient time prior to the race. They often think that, and even 1 or 2 nights sleep before the race will do the job, but it's like you actually need to have a pre-race taper where you look at your training, you look at sleep as part of your training in that period.
Yes.
And have at least 1 or 2 weeks, depending on the race distance that you're planning to embark on, sufficient number of weeks before the race to actually really bank sufficient sleep, between an hour to 90 minutes extra a night if possible. And that way you will actually perform at your best physically and also mentally. And, with racing, it's not a case of if, it's when you face challenges mentally. And if you have had sufficient sleep beforehand, you're more likely to cope with whatever challenges do come up on race day, and your problem solving capacity is going to be much, much better than if you are actually tired and stressed because you haven't had enough sleep.
I think that's an interesting point because obviously our muscles do it. We need to sleep, and it makes us a little bit more. We can endure for a bit longer, and stamina lasts. But people don't always realize that your mental acuity and the ability to respond on race day to challenges also gets impacted. So that's an interesting point.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. And so I also agree with you. You've mentioned now that we shouldn't just make it a night before thing. It's important, but that you should actually plan to ease into good sleep hygiene in the run up to a race. And what would that entail? What kinds of habits do we need to be looking at to get better sleep?
Yeah, well, bodies love routine. Anyone who's trained effectively for a race will know that it's all about consistency. Bodies and minds like consistency. So if you can have a pre-bedtime routine set up in general, it shouldn't just be for race day. You'll perform better in life, work, as a parent, as a partner, as a friend, if you're actually well rested as much of the time as you possibly can. And a bedtime routine should start, a certain amount of time before you intend going to bed. So it's something that needs to be thought about in advance, but then it becomes a habit. So it's no longer a chore. It's no longer a thing to organize. You just do it. It becomes your routine. So things like planning to avoid screen time 2 hours before bed. This is really hard in today's culture.
Yeah.
And, we're all of us addicted to our phones and devices to some extent. But if you can really make an effort to get off the computer, get off your phone, get off the TV, whatever blue light emitting devices you are addicted to, get off them. If you do need to work at the computer late for work, you can get blue light filters for nighttime. So there are things you can do. So that's the first thing. Minimize or avoid screen time 2 hours before bedtime if you can. The other things are to just have habits. What you do at that time. Is it that you're going to get all of your busyness out the way at least half an hour before bedtime, so then you've got half an hour in bed doing something that allows you to wind down? So that might be reading a book, it might be using an app like Headspace or Smiling Minds to go through some meditation, or actually something that's really beneficial to athletes who have a race is embarking on visualization. So, you know, a lot of people say, oh, well, there's no point me going to bed early because I can't actually sleep, particularly the night before a race, because they have the pre-race nerves. But if you can actually just get into bed and dim the lights or switch the lights off, get comfortable, you're actually resting your body anyway. And that in itself is of value. So if you're in your bed, lights off, comfortably ensconced in your doona and calm, you can run through your race mentally. You can, you know, visualize the course. You can memorize the course details, where the aid stations are. You can practice your pacing in your head. You can practice your mindset tools, your mantras, or your positive affirmations. And you can practice experiencing problems and practice solving them. And this is all really beneficial because, as I said before, it's not if problems arise on race day, it's when problems arise on race day. If you've actually practiced them in your mind before, your brain is tricked into thinking it's been here before, and it doesn't panic because it thinks, oh, I already know how to deal with this problem. I've done it recently. And the brain doesn't distinguish between a memory or a visualization. It just thinks, I know the answer because I've thought about that or I've done it recently. So even if you've just thought about it in your head before bed, that's essentially a practice for your brain. So those are all good things to do, you know, prior to race day. But generally speaking, I think, you know, whatever makes you feel relaxed and calm pre-bedtime, go with that. Reading's my option. I'm a real bookworm, so that would be the thing that I would choose. But for, you know, not everybody likes that. So whatever works, basically.
In terms of, on a more sort of practical, physical level almost, in terms of nutrition and maybe hydration, are there any foods, we know, you know, about carbo loading and following a good diet and what to eat, but are there any foods to actually avoid before race date that might interfere with a good night's sleep? And similarly, is hydration important for that kind of thing?
Yeah, now look, this is a very individual thing because certain foods would upset some individuals and not others. But the obvious things that are universal are obviously avoiding alcohol, because that's known to disrupt our sleep and the quality of our sleep, and particularly before a race. But caffeine, you know, if you do have like a morning coffee or a lunchtime coffee or cups of tea, maybe avoiding caffeine in the afternoon so that it doesn't disrupt your sleep. And again, this is a very individual thing. Some people can drink umpteen cups of tea mid-afternoon and it doesn't affect them at all. So it's about knowing yourself and knowing what affects you. But generally speaking, most people are affected by caffeine late into the afternoon and nighttime, and it does affect sleep. In terms of carbohydrate loading, obviously that's a good idea before a race anyway, but it's protein that is said to help sleep. Actually, there's an article that I shared on my website, which I'll share with you. And it's an expert on sleep from the US, and he points to some research that making sure you have adequate protein in your diet, because that actually helps you get a good night's sleep. So that's another thing. And then in terms of hydration, I guess the obvious thing is to avoid drinking too much before bed so that you don't have to get out in the middle of the night to go to the loo. So again, knowing yourself is the thing. And I think in terms of foods, just avoiding things that typically cause tricky tummy issues, like, you know, very spicy foods or very rich foods that, you know, could cause issue on race day. So I think just keep your diet normal for what's normal for you. I think that's the key, and don't add anything funky close to race day.
Oh, that reminds me of the whole thing. What the golden rule being: nothing new on race day, be it new shoes or new clothes or even a new diet. Just avoid it on race day, or even
try it and test it. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Then back to sort of working up towards the day. Do you think it could be beneficial if before you go to sleep, maybe even 2 days before, to sort out all of the practicalities, like know where you're supposed to go, have the directions, put your gear out, know what you'll have for breakfast. It's almost like taking off a mental load the night before.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head there. I think one of the key reasons for poor sleep is anxiety, and we all get pre-race nerves. That's normal. That's just your brain signaling that something important is about to happen, especially if you've trained really hard for many months. So it's absolutely inevitable, normal, and expected to feel a little bit anxious before your race. But to minimize those butterflies, it's best to take care of all the logistics and the planning as soon as you can. So try not to leave things until the last minute. Get as prepared as you can. So if you can organize your travel and your logistics, your start line logistics well in advance, have everything that you're going to wear laid out perfectly so that all you've got to do is get up and put it on. Think through your pre-race breakfast. Think through whether you're going to need to take a snack. If it's a long journey to the race, you're going to be standing around for a while. Think about, will I need something before the gun goes off? Think about, are you going to need extra clothing whilst you're hanging around? So literally think through all the possible scenarios so that you can control what you can, and that really helps you get a good night's sleep, because obviously there are things out of your control. There's no point worrying about the weather. You can't control the weather, but you can control how you respond to it. You can control what you choose to wear, your clothing. So having all those things laid out, and whether you need a post-race drop bag as well. If that's a facility available, you should always use that. If you don't have anybody meeting you, you want to have access to warm, dry clothes and a post-run fuel and hydration as soon as you cross the finish line as well, just to make your whole race day experience as beautiful and comfortable and memorable for the right reasons. As possible.
A question I was wondering about, should you the day before put in a last hard training session, or should you just sort of relax a bit, maybe stretch a bit and trust that you are fit enough? Can a hard race session or a hard training session actually make your sleep worse?
That's a really good question. The hard answer is absolutely not. Your training is done. The truth of the matter is it takes the body approximately 2 weeks to respond to any single training session anyway. So the training that you do in race week or the day before the race is unlikely to add to your fitness, but it most definitely will add to your fatigue. Okay, so if you are really well prepared for a race, you want to have a pre-race taper, and the duration of that taper depends on your goal race. If you're racing 10K, a couple of days to a week is sufficient. If you're racing a marathon, I'd recommend 2 weeks of really light to minimal training. So the frequency of training is similar to what you're used to, because as I said before, bodies love routine. It's just that the overall volume is reduced, so duration is reduced. You still keep a little bit of intensity in there just to keep you sharp. You don't want to get sluggish, especially when you're accustomed to regular running training. So to do absolutely nothing for 2 weeks would be an equally bad shock for the system for other reasons. You wouldn't feel yourself. But you would run easier and you'd run shorter with a few strides in there, or a couple of intervals, or a short tempo section within a shorter, easier run. Something to keep you a little bit sharp and poppy and excited without actually causing you too much fatigue. So I mean, you can recover really quickly from a short session that has a little bit of intensity in it. Whereas if you did a really hard session the day before race day, you'd actually be fatigued during your race. So it's completely counterproductive. You can't cram fitness. That's the long and short of it. It's not like an exam. You have to, your training's done a week or two before. And anything you do in race week itself is more for the psychology of it, really.
Yeah.
But
it's a bit different. It's a bit different to that last minute cram for uni that I remember where you
Yes,
just
which is very effective.
it's very,
That's how most of us passed our exams, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
then the last question. You've done what you can beforehand, you've readied yourself, but somehow you still had a restless night and you just didn't get the sleep you needed. Is there a way the morning of where you can just sort of shake off a little bit of that effects of the day of a bad night's sleep?
I think you've just got to tell yourself it doesn't matter, because it really doesn't. If you've taken care of your sleep routine, prior to that, you'll be all right. It's
Yeah.
really common to have not slept well the night before a race, particularly if you're having a destination race and you've traveled and you're sleeping somewhere unfamiliar. Sometimes you're traveling overseas for a race. So, there will be international athletes coming to Sydney in September. They
Yeah.
they may not have slept as beautifully as is ideal, but as long as they've taken care of their sleep in general, they'll be fine. So the key, I think, again, it comes back to controlling what you can and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
fussing not worrying yourself about the things that are out of your control.
Yeah.
The worst thing you can do when you can't sleep is to stress about not being
Yeah.
able to sleep. It's
Yeah.
a self-fulfilling negative
Prophecy.
feedback loop. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you really are struggling to sleep the night before, it's fine. Just lie there with the lights off, and as I said, put a meditation app on, or read your book, or run through the race in your head, just knowing that you are resting your body physically, and that in itself is of value. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
relax.
that's yeah. I think that's that whole being in a strange environment, that is such a big one where you just don't feel. So yeah, I like the idea. It's like trust in the process that brought you to this point, and
Yes.
then
Yeah.
just go
And
with it.
that's a big thing about race day success, the ability to stand on the start line with confidence, knowing that you've done the training. If you've done the training, most, and that's also a key thing to mention. Nobody gets to the start line having done 100% of their planned training. That's not realistic. It's not achievable. The plan is the plan. The key is that you've done your best and you've done the majority of it if you are to expect to do well. So even if you've missed a few sessions here and there, it's okay. It's the big picture. It's the overall picture. So just being on the start line, confident in yourself, having trust in the process, and backing yourself. You have to have confidence in yourself. It's a huge factor in how well you're going to go. So confidence, trust in yourself, trust in the process, and just backing yourself. That's
Okay.
the best preparation minutes before the gun goes off.
That's good. Well, thank you. If you have any final summary to share, you can go for it. But thank you. I think that's very, very helpful and valuable advice for all of us, like
Yeah,
aspiring
thanks.
runners.
I did think of one other thing that is really nice to incorporate in your wind down routine, particularly on the night pre-race, is a nice hot bath with Epsom salts. That's actually really that's proven to relax and induce deeper restful sleep. So that could be something that
That's
you save
definitely,
as a treat, a pre-race treat. The idea of a bath every night before bed sounds wonderful, but in reality, none of us have got time for that.
no.
But if you can treat yourself before race day, I think that's actually worth it. You've worked hard to get to that point, so that can just be the icing on the cake, I think,
Yeah.
on the night before your race. And
I
then,
love that.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
all there is to do, going to bed knowing that you've done everything you can, and then all that is left is just to enjoy the beautiful race experience.
That's lovely. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you
My
very much,
pleasure.
John.
Thank you for the opportunity to
Yeah.
chat with you.